Once upon a time, in a small, cozy village in Turkey, there lived a kind man named Rahamat. Rahamat was not a rich man. In fact, he and his family were quite poor. His family included his loving wife, Shalima, and their bright son, Ilyak. Their house was a simple one, nestled among rolling hills and green fields. Their days were filled with hard work, and their nights were spent under a sky full of twinkling stars. Rahamat's heart was big, but his pockets were empty. He longed for a way to make life better for his family. Rahamat had dreams of providing a comfortable life for Shalima and giving Ilyak a good education. But in their village, dreams were often overshadowed by the weight of reality. Money was scarce, and the family struggled to make ends meet. One day, as he walked through the bustling streets of his village, his troubled thoughts led him to a decision. He had heard whispers about a mysterious and notorious figure in the village, known as an Oja. An Oja, my friends, is a person believed to possess mystical powers and knowledge, often consulted for various problems, especially those of a supernatural nature. Rahamat, driven by desperation, decided to seek the guidance of this Oja in the hopes of finding a way out of their dire financial situation. The Oja lived in a secluded part of the village, and his reputation was covered in darkness. People spoke of his spooky rituals and uncanny ability to tap into the supernatural. When Rahamat finally reached the Oja's dwelling, he was met with an atmosphere thick with incense smoke and the dim glow of flickering candles. With hope in his heart, Rahamat shared his worries with the Oja. The Oja listened carefully and then, in a hushed voice, suggested something unusual. The Oja spoke of a lady Jinn, a supernatural being believed to possess great powers. This lady Jinn, he claimed, could bring unimaginable wealth and prosperity into Rahamat's life. However, the Oja's intentions were far from noble, for he had a dark and greedy side. The desire of the Oja was purely driven by greed and malevolence. The Oja wanted to exploit the supernatural powers of the Jinn for his own selfish desires and personal gain. He saw an opportunity to manipulate Rahamat into an unholy union with the Jinn, knowing that it would bring him wealth and prosperity. He convinced Rahamat that the only way to escape poverty was to marry this lady Jinn. Rahamat, his mind clouded by the promise of wealth and a better life, found himself entangled in a web of darkness. His heart was torn. He loved Shalima deeply and didn't want to betray her trust. But he also longed to provide a better life for his family. As he left the Oja's dwelling that day, he faced a difficult decision. After leaving the Oja's place, Rahamat's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He knew he needed to talk to Shalima about this bizarre idea of marrying a Jinn. As he walked back to his humble home, the weight of the decision sat heavily on his shoulders. That evening, when Rahamat gathered his family around the dinner table, he decided to share everything with them. He told Shalima and Ilyak about his visit to the Oja and the peculiar advice he had received. Shalima, a wise and caring woman, was concerned. She had heard stories about the Jinn, and they weren't stories of happiness and good fortune. Shalima asked Rahamat to think long and hard about the consequences of such a decision. She reminded him of the love they shared and the importance of their family's unity. Ilyak, too, was unsure about this strange proposal and worried about his parents' future. Despite their concerns, Rahamat couldn't ignore the desire for a better life. The Oja had painted a picture of wealth, success, and happiness that was hard to resist. The promise of a brighter future for his family was too tempting to pass up. Days turned into weeks, and Rahamat found himself returning to the Oja, still wrestling with his decision. The Oja, with a sly smile, continued to play on Rahamat's desperation, convincing him that marrying the Jinn was the only way to change their fortunes. As time passed, Rahamat's determination hesitated, and the Oja's influence grew stronger. He assured Rahamat that everything would be fine and that his family would soon live a life of luxury beyond their wildest dreams. But in his heart, Rahamat couldn't help but wonder if this was all too good to be true. Rahamat couldn't ignore the Oja's persuasive words any longer. His family's struggles weighed heavily on him, and the promise of a better life seemed like a lifeline. So, he made the fateful choice to marry the Jinn. The wedding was unlike any other. There were no grand celebrations, no joyous ceremonies. It was a solemn affair, conducted in secret, far away from their village. Rahamat, despite his initial doubts, went through with it, hoping that the Jinn would bring prosperity to his family. Soon after their unconventional marriage, Rahamat, his wife, son, and the Jinn left their village behind and moved to a bustling city. Here, Rahamat's life took an unexpected turn. His once modest business began to flourish. The Jinn's mysterious presence seemed to work wonders, bringing good luck and success to everything Rahamat touched. Their home, now a grand mansion, stood as a testament to their newfound wealth. As Rahamat's business thrived, he decided it was time to invest in his son's future. He sent Ilyak to a prestigious university in another city, determined to provide him with the education and opportunities he never had. However, not everything was as rosy as it seemed. Back in the city, tension began to grow between Rahamat's two wives, Shalima and the Jinn. Shalima couldn't help but feel like an outsider in her own home. She saw her husband's affection shifting towards the Jinn, and it filled her heart with jealousy and sadness. The Jinn, on the other hand, had her own agenda. She used her mystical powers to maintain her hold over Rahamat. Her intentions were far from loving. She saw Rahamat merely as a means to an end, a way to fulfill her own desires and ambitions. The Jinn's mystical powers allowed her to exist in the mortal realm, but her connection to it was fragile. By marrying Rahamat and forming a bond with him, she sought to anchor herself more firmly in the mortal world, ensuring her continued existence and influence. Through her union with Rahamat, the Jinn aimed to accumulate wealth, power, and resources in the mortal world. She used her supernatural abilities to manipulate Rahamat's life and business, ensuring his success and prosperity. This allowed her to accumulate riches and establish dominance in the material realm. Not only that, the Jinn's ambition went beyond wealth. She desired to dominate and control the lives of those around her, including Rahamat and his family. Shalima grew increasingly saddened by the situation when the Lady Jinn had a child from Rahamat. She watched as Rahamat showered his affection on the child he had with the Lady Jinn, while her own heart ached with a sense of abandonment and jealousy. Unable to bear the weight of her despair any longer, Shalima made a courageous decision. She turned to her loyal maid, Ella, for help. Ella had been a faithful companion for years, and Shalima knew that she could share anything with her without fear of judgment. One evening, as the moonlight spilled into their luxurious home, Shalima summoned Ella to her side. With a heavy heart, she shared her worries and the uncanny presence of the Lady Jinn, who had become like a dark cloud over their lives. Ella, ever loyal and caring, listened attentively to Shalima's words. She could see the torment in her mistress's eyes and felt compelled to help in any way she could. Together, they decided to take matters into their own hands, seeking the aid of another Oja, someone they hoped could free them from the Jinn's sinister influence. The two women embarked on a journey to find that Oja. They ventured far from their newfound city, traveling through winding roads and thick forests, until they reached a remote village rumored to be home to a powerful Oja. The Oja they sought was known for his knowledge of ancient rituals and his ability to connect with the spirit world. He listened carefully to Shalima and Ella's tale, and his face grew serious as they described their dilemma. The Oja knew that the Jinn was no ordinary entity and that confronting her would be a dangerous endeavor. He warned Shalima and Ella that attempting to banish such a powerful spirit could have serious consequences, not only for them but for their entire family. Despite the ominous warning, Shalima and Ella were resolute in their decision. The Oja agreed to help them. The path they were about to embark on was fraught with danger, and they would need all their strength and determination to see it through. With determined hearts, Shalima and Ella returned to their grand mansion, ready to confront the Jinn with the Oja's ritual. The Oja had instructed them on a complex and dangerous ritual, one that aimed to weaken the Jinn's hold on Rahamat and the family. Together, Shalima and Ella followed the Oja's guidance, reciting ancient incantations and performing ceremonies with firm determination. As the ritual reached its climax, a sudden, spooky silence descended upon the house. Then, a piercing scream crushed the stillness. It was the Jinn, howling in agony. The ritual had taken its toll, claiming the life of her child. The death of the Jinn's child occurred during the ritual performed by Shalima and Ella to weaken the Jinn's presence in the house. In an attempt to rid their home of the malevolent spirit, they performed a dangerous and powerful ritual that inadvertently led to the death of the Jinn's child. But, despite the sacrifice, the Jinn's presence lingered. She was weakened, but she had not been fully banished. The darkness that had taken hold of their lives remained, casting a long shadow over the family. In the aftermath of the ritual, the consequences became painfully clear. Rahamat's health began to deteriorate rapidly. He grew weaker with each passing day, his vitality drained by the lingering presence of the Jinn. Shalima, too, fell ill, burdened not only by her own sickness but by the guilt and sorrow that weighed heavily on her heart. As Rahamat and Shalima's health declined, Ella, their loyal maid, took on the role of caregiver. She tended to their needs with untiring devotion, doing her best to ease their suffering. But the struggle to find a solution weighed heavily on all of them. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years as they searched for answers, consulting wise individuals and seeking remedies from far and wide. But the Jinn's grip on Rahamat seemed unbreakable, and the family was trapped in a nightmarish limbo. Every time they tried to leave the house to seek help from the Oja or any other spiritual healer, they found themselves mysteriously trapped in a confusing time loop. It was as if the Jinn had woven a dark web around them, ensnaring them in an unending cycle of despair and confinement. No matter how hard they tried or how far they walked, they would always find themselves back within the walls of the haunted house. The outside world seemed to slip away, replaced by a disorienting sense of isolation and hopelessness. As days passed by, the family's sense of entrapment grew more profound. They felt like prisoners within their own home, cut off from the outside world and any possibility of help. The walls of their once beloved house seemed to close in around them, and the malevolent presence of the Jinn was an ever-present, suffocating weight. At that time, Ilyak completed his university studies and graduated with flying colors. Filled with excitement and hope for the future, he decided it was time to return home to his parents, Rahamat and Shalima, along with his newlywed wife, Simran. The journey back to the family home was filled with anticipation and joy, as Ilyak and Simran looked forward to reuniting with their loved ones. They imagined warm embraces, smiles, and happy conversations. However, upon their arrival, they were met with an atmosphere that was far from what they had expected. Rahamat and Shalima greeted them with strange smiles, their eyes reflecting worry and anxiety. The warmth and happiness that once filled their home seemed to have vanished. Ilyak couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he observed his parents. They were distant as if they were hiding something. He tried to engage them in conversation, asking about their well-being and what had been happening in his absence, but their answers were unclear and indirect. Ilyak and Simran settled into their new life in the old family home, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't long before they started to notice strange occurrences. It started with objects moving on their own accord. Chairs would slide across the room, and doors would open and close without any visible cause. Unexplained sounds echoed through the halls at night, and shadows seemed to dance in the corners of their vision. The atmosphere in the house grew increasingly unsettling. One night, as Iliak and Simran lay in bed, they heard the faint cries of a child coming from the basement. When they investigated, they were met with the sight of a woman, her form hidden by shadows, holding a small child. Their faces were pale, and their eyes seemed to pierce into Iliak and Simran's souls. Before they could react, the woman and child faded into the darkness, leaving only an unsettling sense of ominous in their wake. These paranormal activities continued to intensify, leaving Iliak and Simran in a state of fear and confusion. They experienced disturbing nightmares, each more terrifying than the last. In Simran's nightmares, she would find herself trapped in a suffocating darkness, unable to move or scream. Sinister whispers would surround her, growing louder and more frightening with each passing moment. She would awaken in a cold sweat, gasping for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Iliak's nightmares were equally terrifying. He would see his family trapped in a never-ending cycle of despair and torment, their faces contorted in anguish. He would reach out to help them, but his efforts were always in vain, and he would wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by the images he had witnessed. It became clear that something malevolent and otherworldly had taken hold of their family home. One fateful day, tragedy struck the already stressed household. Rahamat passed away under mysterious and unexplained circumstances. His death sent shockwaves through the family, leaving them in a state of profound grief and confusion. Iliak and Simran, heartbroken and desperate for answers, turned to Ella, their loyal maid. Ella had been silently observing the unfolding events and had a deep understanding of the secrets and mysteries that haunted the house. Ella, with tears in her eyes, began to share what she knew. She recounted the rituals conducted by Shalima and herself to weaken the Jinn's presence, the tragic sacrifice of the Jinn's child, and the ongoing struggle to banish the malevolent spirit from their lives. Her words were filled with remorse and sorrow as she revealed the extent of their dilemma. Despite Rahamat's passing, the malevolent Jinn's presence lingered like a sinister shadow over the household. It became increasingly evident that they were facing a force far beyond their comprehension or control. The rituals and prayers of the Oja, as well-intentioned as they were, had proven to be inadequate against the Jinn's power. In the face of this mounting terror, Iliak, Simran, Shalima, and Ella began to realize that they needed more than just human help. They needed a spiritual entity or force of greater magnitude, one that could challenge and vanquish the malevolent Jinn. Ella, ever resourceful and determined, hatched a daring plan to seek assistance from a renowned intermediary between the mortal realm and the spirit realms, a person named Archon. Archon was known far and wide for his wisdom and his ability to communicate with entities from the other side. If anyone could help them, it was him. The plan was bold, my friends. Ella suggested that Iliak and Simran embark on a quest to find Archon, who had chosen to live in seclusion, far from the prying eyes of the world. His whereabouts were shrouded in mystery, known only to a few trusted individuals. The urgency of their mission became increasingly apparent as the Jinn's malevolent intentions became clearer. It was no longer just a matter of dispelling a malevolent spirit, it was a battle for the very survival of their family. Iliak and Simran felt the weight of their family's fate resting squarely on their shoulders. They knew that Archon represented their only hope, their last chance to confront the Jinn and free their family from the horrors. But it seemed Iliak could not leave the house. An invisible source was stopping him from leaving the house. However, Simran was able to go outside the house. It was strange. So, having no options, armed with Ella's guidance, Simran had to venture into the unknown, traveling through distant lands and unfamiliar territory to locate Archon. Simran had embarked on her dangerous journey in search of Archon, desperately seeking a solution to the supernatural torment that had engulfed her family. With each passing day, the urgency of her mission weighed heavily on her heart. Back at the haunted house, Shalima, Ella, and Iliak were left to face the malevolent Jinn's wrath. Shalima, who had already suffered immensely, became the Jinn's primary target. One fateful night, in a brutal and horrifying act, the Jinn claimed Shalima's life, leaving the household shattered by grief and despair. Ella, too, found herself in grave danger. The Jinn's malevolence extended to her, and her life hung by a fragile thread. Night after night, Ella was tormented by terrifying visions and encounters with the Lady Jinn. She would wake up to find the entity's dark presence looming over her, whispering malevolent secrets and threats. The supernatural force seemed to draw strength from Ella's fear, growing more powerful with each passing day. She knew that she could be the next victim of the relentless spirit's vengeance. Iliak called Simran about the devastating news of Shalima's death and told her to hurry. Simran was distressed, but it made her more determined. Simran's quest led her through treacherous paths and across unfamiliar territory, but her determination never decreased. She followed the indefinable trail of information that hinted at Archon's whereabouts, and her journey was fraught with both danger and hope. At long last, she found herself standing before Archon, a figure of great mystery and power. He displayed an air of calm authority, his eyes holding a depth of knowledge that hinted at his extraordinary abilities. Archon listened carefully as Simran recounted the harrowing events that had befallen her family, from the mysterious marriage to the malevolent Jinn to the tragic loss of Shalima. He understood the gravity of the situation and recognized the formidable adversary they faced. With firm determination, Archon agreed to join forces with Simran, and an Oja who happened to be Archon's teacher. The battle against the malevolent Jinn required a unique combination of spiritual knowledge and power, and Archon's abilities to traverse the spirit realm were a crucial component in their fight. In the meantime, Ella, the loyal maid, became the target of the Lady Jinn's persistent pursuit. One fateful night, as Ella lay in her bed, the entity descended upon her in a gruesome and brutal manner. The room was filled with chilling whispers and a bone-chilling coldness that seeped into Ella's very soul. The next morning, Iliak found Ella dead. He felt more helpless than ever. He tried to reach Simran over calls, but it wasn't happening. It made Iliak tremble into fear. At that moment Simran, Archon, and Oja reached the house. With their arrival, the household was filled with a sense of hope for Iliak. Archon and the Oja wasted no time. They gathered their tools, prepared their rituals, and began to recite ancient prayers that resonated with a power beyond the natural realm. The atmosphere in the house crackled with energy, and the air seemed to vibrate with the anticipation of what was to come. The rituals they performed were not mere superstitions, they were powerful incantations that tapped into the unseen forces of the universe. Archon and the Oja chanted with voices that resonated with authority, their words carrying a weight that transcended the mortal realm. As the rituals reached their buildup, the atmosphere seemed to shift. The very walls of the house trembled, and the Lady Jinn's malevolent presence surged. She emerged from the shadows, her form shifting between ethereal and tangible, a manifestation of darkness and vengeance. The malevolent Jinn, sensing the approaching threat to her existence, made her presence known. Her voice echoed through the house, chilling all who heard it. She revealed her motivations, a twisted desire for revenge stemming from the belief that the family had taken her only heir. In her haunting words, the Jinn painted a miserable picture of her torment and her insatiable hunger for vengeance. Her malevolence was born from a deep-seated sense of injustice, and she vowed that she would not rest until her thirst for revenge was quenched. Then her voice changed. Her tormented voice echoed through the room, recounting a tragic tale of her own. She believed that Iliak should not be the heir of Rahamat's fortune, because Iliak's mother, Shalima, killed her child. She believed that Iliak's presence in the family was an insult to her own lost child and a reminder of the betrayal she had suffered. So, Iliak needed to be killed. Her torment of the family was her twisted way of seeking justice, as she saw it. It was also the reason why Iliak could not leave the house, as he was also a target of the Jinn. As Arkan, the Oja, Iliak, and Simran listened to her haunting revelation, they understood the depth of her pain and the darkness that had consumed her. But they also knew that her malevolent actions could not be justified, and her reign of terror had to be brought to an end. As the confrontation escalated, the family, Arkan, and the Oja stood united in the face of the Jinn's malevolent power. The rituals and prayers grew more intense, each word carrying the weight of centuries of spiritual knowledge and conviction. Arkan, the intermediary between the mortal and spirit realms, knew that it was time for a daring and perilous venture into the spirit realm. Arkan had spent his life enhancing his mystical abilities, forging a connection with the unseen forces that existed beyond the boundaries of the mortal world. His training had prepared him for moments like these when he would need to transcend the physical and engage in a battle of wills with a supernatural entity. With a resolute expression, Arkan closed his eyes and began his journey into the spirit realm. It was a transition that required not just courage, but also an unwavering belief in his own abilities and a deep connection to the spiritual energies that flowed through him. As he traversed the boundary between the mortal and spirit realms, Arkan found himself in an unreal and supernatural landscape. The spirit realm was a place where the rules of the physical world did not apply, where reality itself was malleable, and where the supernatural forces held authority. The Lady Jinn, her presence dark and foreboding, awaited him in this otherworldly realm. The battle of wills that followed was a disturbing and otherworldly spectacle. Arkan and the Lady Jinn clashed in a realm where thoughts and intentions held the power to shape reality. It was a test of strength, not physical, but spiritual. Each sought to assert their dominance over the other, to bend the fabric of the spirit realm to their will. As they engaged in this supernatural struggle, the very landscape around them shifted and contorted. For what felt like an eternity, Arkan and the Lady Jinn battled in the spirit realm, their determination unwavering. Arkan drew upon his mystical knowledge and the depths of his inner strength, while the Lady Jinn unleashed the full extent of her supernatural powers. With a powerful incantation that resonated through the spirit realm, Arkan unleashed a surge of pure, radiant light. It was a force that transcended the malevolent presence of the Lady Jinn, a force that symbolized hope, redemption, and the triumph of the human spirit over darkness. The Lady Jinn's form trembled and diminished, her vengeful presence unable to withstand the overwhelming power of Arkan's exorcism. She let out a haunting scream that echoed through the spirit realm, a cry of defeat and despair. As the brilliant light enveloped her, she dissipated into nothingness, her malevolent hold on the mortal world shattered. With the Lady Jinn banished from the spirit realm, a profound stillness settled over the haunted house. The malevolent presence that had tormented Iliak's family for so long was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity. As they expressed their heartfelt thanks to Arkan and the Oja, the young couple felt a profound sense of closure. Their journey had been a harrowing one, marked by fear, loss, and the relentless pursuit of the unknown. But they had emerged stronger, united in their love and resolve to protect their family. But the toll of the haunting had been great. Iliak and Simran were left physically and emotionally drained. The scars of their ordeal ran deep, and the haunted house held memories that would forever haunt their souls. The memories of the horrors they had witnessed within its walls were etched into their souls, and they knew that the house could never truly be home again. With the haunted house now free from the Lady Jinn's malevolent presence, Iliak and Simran faced a momentous decision. Their resolve was clear. They made the decision to sell the haunted house and to never return to its ominous halls. It was a choice born out of the desire for a fresh start, a clean slate on which to build a life free from the specter of the past. As they prepared to leave behind the house, Iliak and Simran knew that they were leaving a chapter of their lives behind. Before leaving, they sought the help of the Oja, who helped them with Archon once more, not to battle a malevolent spirit this time, but to purify the house. The Oja performed rituals and prayers, cleansing the house of any lingering negative energies and ensuring that it would be a safe and peaceful place for its new occupants. As the rituals concluded, there was a sense of closure and finality. The house, once a place of unspeakable horror, had been transformed into a space where new memories could be created. With the purification complete, Iliak and Simran bid farewell to the house. Their journey to a new beginning was not without its challenges, but they were filled with hope and gratitude. They knew that they had emerged from the haunting stronger and more resilient, with a renewed appreciation for the importance of family and the enduring power of love. As they drove away from the house that had been a symbol of their suffering, they looked toward the future with a sense of optimism. The malevolent Jinn was finally behind them, and the horrors of the past were replaced by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The family's story was one of survival, resilience, and the triumph of light over darkness. Their haunting ordeal had tested their bonds and their courage, but it had also taught them the value of love, unity, and the indomitable human spirit. If you've been captivated by this tale of redemption and the supernatural, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss our future spine-tingling adventures. Thank you for joining us on Phantom Tales. Until our next encounter with the unknown, may your nights be filled with wonder and your dreams remain unhaunted.